This time on Ask Rad Rat, we talk about a lot of different questions, including if different wheel brands actually make any difference. So let's get right into it. Welcome back to Rad Rat Video, the channel you can learn something new about skateboarding 3 times a week, or roughly 3 times a week, kind of depends. In this coming month, possibly the next one or two, things are going to be a little bit slower around the channel. My work has been crazy. I actually haven't filmed anything in about 2 months, which is weird because you just saw me. I did an Ask Rad Rat last week, but I filmed those in December. I did a ton of those. I had no work coming in. I was filming like crazy to try to get ready for the onslaught that is the new year. But as soon as January hit, I've been working nonstop through today. Just crazy. So that's been a good thing though, because I'm hoping to move. I want to buy a house or a condo or something like that. So being able to focus on paid work for a while and build up a little bit of money has been a good thing, but the channel's been a little bit on the back burner. But that's not a permanent thing. That's just the way things are at the moment. Hopefully I'll be able to pick things back up a little bit in the future. I do have a couple major videos planned for this month, but it's just not going to be consistently 3 times a week the entire time. But I will get back to that as soon as I can. But let's get into the questions for today. I got a couple from Carl. His first one is, who's your current favorite contemporary pro skater, i.e. turned pro in the last 5 years? Mine is Joslin. So I figured this would be an easy question. I came up with a couple of names, looked them up, and they were all a little bit older than that. I guess I don't do a great job of keeping up with who's the new hot pro skater, because being pro doesn't really have the same cachet that it used to. You're not at a whole different level than everyone else. You know, you can go through Instagram and see the best trick from 1,000 different AMs and have a lot of skateboarding content in your face without actually going out and checking out the latest video parts on Thrasher or something like that. And so for me, yeah, I don't know. I don't have a big list of all my favorite pros these days that are all new. But Joslin's great. I'll just agree with you on that one. But let's get into your second question. You are the only skateboard historian I know of. Who were your influences or role models to start the channel? You know, there used to be a lot of stuff like what I do. There was the 411 videos, the On Video series as well, where they would have these little documentaries about different topics. So I did a video about the Pop Shove It. I think I showed something in there about that. But they have, you know, biographies of your favorite pros and stuff that I do as well. But they had the benefit of actually being able to go talk to that guy, go call him up and have him come in for an interview or something like that. So I'm just able to research and tell you what I found. But yeah, that was probably the only thing that's really in the same vein as what I do exactly. So my main influences are actually gaming channels. So like the gaming historian will do topics in the gaming world that aren't necessarily like the big thing, you know, like the history of this weird controller or something like that. And so I try to take that kind of idea and do it in skateboarding. And there's a lot of other gaming channels that are more historical based, more of like a deep dive into certain topics. And I really like those because this channel kind of started as a gaming channel, skateboard gaming specifically. I was going to review every single skateboarding game ever, and I'm still planning on doing that. I've just expanded into other topics. And so I started doing, you know, PlayStation 1 skateboard games and stuff like that. And then eventually what I did was How Tony Hawk Ruined the Hard Flip, which is a video that I'm not going to link, and you've probably already seen. It's a little embarrassing now because it was such an early video. But the idea was basically how the Tony Hawk series and other skateboarding games at the time all had hard flips animated really weird and wrong. And there was a lot of stuff at the time, like you would have a hard flip in a game and also a front side varial kickflip, which is a hard flip. And so a lot of kids at the time who didn't have, you know, older skaters in the area, like in my town, didn't know what a hard flip was because of different games. So in my school, we always thought that a really vertical pop shove it was a hard flip because that's what it looked like in the games. So I did a video about that. I didn't do a great job of explaining it. Just check the comments. But that video got like 250,000 views or something like that. And so there was definitely a market for other skateboard topics. And when I saw how that went, I decided to try to do more stuff like that and expand out of gaming, you know. So that's basically how I came to do the kind of stuff that I do. The second question is from Michael Redmond. What is a kook and why does skateboarding have a rebel image to it? It's kind of funny because the only time I ever hear kook is in a skateboarding context. It comes from surfing, but I live in Colorado. There's no oceans here. I don't know any surfers. I know some people who snowboard and none of them use it. But if you go to any kind of skateboarding comment section or subreddit or anything where skateboarders are typing things out to each other, you hear kook constantly over and over and over, which is kind of stupid. So I looked up where it comes from, and no one's 100% sure, but it's either from cuckoo, which is an insult people would use in the 17 and 1800s, or it comes from a Hawaiian word that means feces. So you would use it for people who suck at surfing, basically, and it somehow has survived all these decades into skateboarding for some weird reason. But yeah, it's kind of weird because it's not like you go out to Walmart and you hear people calling other people a kook, but it's only in skateboarding. So I don't know, it's kind of a weird one, but if you check my comment section, I'm sure you see it like 20 times a day. But second part of your question, why does skateboarding have a rebel image to it? I mean, it's street skating is obviously a rebellious thing to do. You hop a fence, you go use your trucks to grind on stuff and make it look worse. It's illegal for the most part, and so skateboarding in general gets that image. I mean, that should be pretty clear. The next question is from Nanny Namju, and I'm gonna summarize it a little bit, but he says, I feel I spend at least 30% of my time waiting for scooter kids to get out of the way. I remember getting a skateboard thrown at my head multiple times for pulling something like that back in the day. It's common sense to be able to see that it's dangerous, right? I just want to hear your opinion on the scooter epidemic and if it's the same over in the States as it is in the UK. So he goes in more detail. He's basically talking about where you go to a public park, public skate park, and there's kids just running around on the ramps, like really little kids getting in the way. Scooter kids just like standing around, being in the way, sitting on ledges that you're supposed to grind, all that kind of stuff. And although that's not really the problem where I am now, I remember when I used to go to skate parks a lot back in the day. It was kids on blades mostly, but it was a paid skate park. You had to pay like $17 to get in there. And there'd be a ledge with like 10 kids just sitting all on it. And it's like hundreds of dollars worth of kids just sitting there, not doing anything. And I can only imagine how much worse it is in some places where there's free public parks. And that's the big difference, I think. Now that you can either go to the playground as a parent, you can either go to the playground or the skate park, and your kids want to go to the skate park, you just go drop them off. It's a public park. You're not really thinking about safety. It's just, it's a public park. They're going to run around. They're going to do their thing. It's no big deal. Of course, if you had half a brain, or at least eyes, you'd see all of the like signs that say it's dangerous. You'd see a kid flying out of a ramp with a wood and metal thing flipping around in the air. It should be pretty obvious that you shouldn't let a 5-year-old run around barefoot on a ramp and get in the way and stuff. But people are stupid. Like, I don't know what to tell you. People are just stupid. So where I'm at now, it's a college town, so it's mostly like 20-somethings. There's not a ton of little kids. And there's 4 or 5 skate parks, depending on where you count the border of the city. But there's a lot of places you can go. So I don't really see that too often. But I get very similar emails to you all the time, most of them from the UK. So you should definitely not feel alone. That is a huge problem, and I don't know what you do about it. The only thing that I used to do at those skate parks, like if they're on a ledge that I want to grind, I would like skate up to it, pretend I don't see them, go like I'm about to ollie on, and like, oh, and just like, try to make it obvious that they're in the way and ask them to leave or something. You don't want to start a fight because there's a trillion of them, and who knows what'll happen, but it's tough. I don't know what to tell you, but you're definitely not alone. Next question is from Calamity, who asks, do you ever replace your pivot cups? Have you gotten into aftermarket pivots? You always hear people talking about bushings, Bones hardware, etc., but almost never pivot cups despite the potential they have to customize how your trucks ride. With a lot of trucks coming with soft pivots and most aftermarket pivots being hard, you'd think it would be a bigger deal. Thoughts? Well, I don't think it has as much of an effect as bushings do, and most people don't even care about those either. I don't know anyone who's actively replaces their bushings, and the only reason I do is because I have a box of them from an old sponsor, so I don't even know how much of a difference it makes. For me, it makes more sense to pick a truck that feels good the way that it is and just stick with it. If you want to get into that extreme fine tuning, then that's great, more power to you, but I think for most people it's not as big of a difference that you can't just get over. You know, it's sort of like with how steep the tails are and stuff like that. You might have a preference, but if you grab a board randomly and it's not exactly right, you'll get used to it. For me, if my pivot cups are a little bit too soft, like I'm just gonna get over it. And that's just me. There may be people out there who do, but I've never heard anyone talk about replacing it before. I've never gone to a skate park or skate shop and looked at pivot cups and tried to pick out a different one. It's just something I've never even thought about, and I think most people haven't. But if you do, let them know below because he wanted to hear what you guys thought about that. Last couple questions are from Matthew, and he says, from some of your vids, I've gleaned that you used to live in Metro Detroit. I'm interested to find out what side of town you lived in and where your favorite spots are. I do hear from people from that area in Michigan a lot because I will use old footage to illustrate points, and you'll see the skate park I'm at or that kind of stuff. And a lot of people will contact me about this. I grew up in a town called Almont, which you probably haven't heard of. It's like 40 miles north of the city or so. And so I grew up there. I went to college in Flint. I used to work in Detroit and in Troy and some other spots around there. But my actual hometown, there were no skate spots. So you asked about my favorite spots. There are none. You can go through a street view of Almont, Michigan. You won't find anything. There was this, I think it's a four set right here, but it lands right into the driveway of the main gas station in town and right by the main street. Some kids in school I knew had ollied it, but that's about it. Like there's not, you can't really skate there for long anyway. There used to be a waxed curb that was like curved around one of the stores, but you'd get kicked out. It was right in front of their front door. There was a waxed curb at the high school that I skated a couple of times. Aside from that, I mean, just finding smooth pavement was kind of a challenge, especially for me because I lived outside of town on an old farm. I didn't have a paved road. You know, I lived on a dirt road. And so that actually made a big difference in how I skated because I started skating when I was 12, 13. And so, you know, I couldn't drive anywhere yet. I had to skate at home. I had my paved driveway and I had a lot of grass and dirt. And I lived in Michigan where it snows all the time. So that kind of made a big difference in the way that I chose to skate. So I could only skate the stuff that I built. So I would build boxes and things like that. I built a ramp after a while. So I got into that for a while. But as far as like hardcore street stuff, there wasn't that much to do around there. And I couldn't build that much. I would put my box on top of my hill and try to ollie a couple of feet down that type of thing. So I got really into freestyle because I can do that on a patch of flat ground, and that was it. I would try to get into technical grinds and stuff. I didn't get that good at it, but you know, that was basically all I had at the time. So yeah, I'm from Michigan, but I'm from nowhere, basically. Second part of his question is, what is up with wheels these days? Back when I was skating, everyone rode wheels with a durometer of like 87 and 91A, since all we did was skate street, with the higher ratings like 99 to 101A being meant for ramp riding. Also, is there really that much difference between wheels of the same hardness? So the thing about wheel hardness is that there is a balancing act there. The softer you get, the smoother the ride is, but it's harder to slide. And that could be a good thing depending on your goals. But for street skating, most of the time what you want is to be able to do as many tricks as possible. You want to be able to land that backside flip a little bit early and slide it out. You want to be able to do a blunt slide. You want to be able to do like a crooked grind even. Your heel side wheel is going to slide on that one. You want to have as many options for tricks as you possibly can. If you have to suffer through having a slightly rougher ride, you do it. And that's kind of how it's been the whole time I've been skating. I remember going down this really mild hill this one time. Looked perfectly smooth from the top, but it had super hard wheels. And so I skate down and I'm just shaking the whole way down because it's so rough. I get to the bottom of the hill and like I can't even feel my legs. They're just numb from shaking uncontrollably. And so, yeah, if I had softer wheels, that would have been no problem. But how often am I doing that? Sorry, I just dropped my tablet. How often am I doing that versus how often am I trying to do more tricks? How often am I trying to do a slide versus riding down a hill? And for me, having harder wheels made more sense, at least to a degree. These days, it seems like the scale is coming down a little bit. Used to be anything under 99 was You couldn't find it. It was like a giant pool skating wheel or a longboard wheel. You couldn't find street sizes anything less than 99. Now you can a little bit, but I don't think you're going to see a huge change in that because of those reasons. It's not as easy to do certain tricks, and that is the biggest factor for most skaters. You just suffer through a rough ride to the spot as long as you can do the trick that you want to when you get there. So the second part of your question was if there's a difference between different wheels with the same hardness. So you're talking about if different brands release the same hardness of a wheel, does it really matter? And it does, because there's a million different shapes out there. You can get a freestyle wheel that will cover up the axle. But I just want to show you this chart. This is from Spitfire. A lot of the different brands have their own charts as well that show all their different shapes. Spitfire seem to have the most different ones though. And you can see all the differences here. So the flat spot on the top, that's the contact patch. How wide your contact patch is makes a big difference. And it depends how much you want to slide. So if you have a really narrow contact patch, there's not that much friction. You can slide it a lot easier, but you might not want that. If you're skating like a pool or something like that, you want to be able to carve with confidence and not worry that you're going to slip out. So you have to worry about that kind of thing. And so you can see all the different options there. Like in the bottom here, the Grosso and the Lance, those are both more for transition, and so you see a much wider contact patch. But there's also grooves. So not every single wheel has grooves on that contact patch. So you can have a wider wheel, but you have less contact because there's grooves on it, and you're only riding on the grooves and not the whole flat spot. So that's one other thing. Also, you're seeing a lot of different ways that it curves around the corner, and that has a big difference as far as locking into grinds and stuff like that. If you have a really sharp angle, that might get into a ledge, let's say like a crooked grind or a feeble or something like that, a little bit easier. If you have a really gentle or even flat corner there, you might kind of hit that whole corner at the same time, and it'll grind a little bit slower. So there's a lot of different things. There's also stuff like cores, like a dual durometer cored wheel. Those aren't super popular anymore, but they are still out there. You have wheels with contact patches, like a grinding contact patch, like a sliding plate. There's a lot of different things out there as well. Not to mention the formula. You can have a hardness, but what about how quickly the wheel will bounce? Like that's something else. If you drop two wheels of the same hardness, they won't necessarily bounce to the same amount. And how quickly it bounces back is an important factor. You don't want to land and your wheel will squish and then stay squished. You want to be able to absorb the impact and pop right back without throwing you off. So a lot of different formulas are out there, how quickly they flat spot, if you power slide and stuff like that. That's also down to the formula, not the hardness. So hardness is one factor, but it's sort of like the width of your deck. It's one of the biggest things to keep in mind, but the concave and how steep the tails are, and if there's any special technology with the plies and, all that kind of stuff is also really important. So don't just pick a wheel based solely on the hardness. You may find something much better out there for you. So that's it for this time. Go to radratvideo.com to submit your questions for next time. But until then, here's a lot more videos you can check out. Again, remember this month might be a little bit slow, but there is a ton of stuff in the backlog that you can go check out. So make sure you subscribe by tapping my logo on screen right there, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.